Welcome to Stronger Together, a powerful podcast series hosted by Impact Community Services. I'm Tanya O'Shea, Managing Director of Impact, and I have the pleasure of frontlining this little passion project of ours. In the podcast, we dig into some of the meaty social problems that people are facing within our communities, and we chat with guests willing to tackle the hard conversations. We want you to be kept informed and updated on the latest information, yet are also aware that some of the topics address sensitive issues that could be triggering or distressing for some listeners. If you find any of the content challenging, we encourage you to pause the episode and seek immediate support. Information on where to seek help will be provided at the end of each episode and also on Impact's website, impact.org.au. Please prioritise your well-being while listening. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we live, work and meet. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, traditions, the culture, hopes and values not only of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but of all Australians. Now, let's delve into the important conversations awaiting us in today's episode. Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of Stronger Together. My name is Tanya O'Shea and I love talking to people all about interesting and sometimes super insightful things about what they've got going on in their lives. One of the things that I really love a good conversation about is leadership. It lights me up. I think about leadership every day, actually, from the moment that I wake up. And for me, leadership is like, so I have a gym. So I have a home gym, and for me it's like building that muscle. So like I'm building a muscle in my body every day. I have this practice and I think about the way that I'm turning up as a leader, and I think of it like a practice. So today I wanted to talk about leadership, and I wanted to dig into that a little bit with someone who has recently been awarded the Leadership HQ not only Leader of the Year, but overall Outstanding Leader of the Year. And on top of that, her organisation was also named Leadership Organisation of the Year or Organisation of the Year. So whammy, triple whammy, triple qualified, Rachael Cook. So from the CEO of Inclusee. So I'm super pumped to be talking to Rachael today because I feel like I am in celebrity presence. So Rachael, thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you so much, Tanya. No, you're absolutely not in celebrity presence, but I'm very proud to be here and absolutely represent the organisation.
Yeah, so what a night. So it felt like only a couple of weeks ago, but it was back in May. And that award, it was a gala night, it was in Sydney. What did that feel like to just get like award after award after award? Like, what was that like for you?
Oh, surreal. And it's still surreal. And it's funny that you said it was back in May. It feels like it was last night still. I'm still absolutely coming off a very, big high from that moment. But it's surreal. And I say this all the time, anyone that I talk to about it, I need to look at something tangible to actually sink in that really did happen. So whether I have to pick up the actual trophy itself or I have to look at a photo or something, I feel like it was a dream. I feel like it didn't actually happen. And throughout that whole night, as it went on and my name got called up for particularly the second and the third one, I could hear my name, but it wasn't even processing. It was like, I know that's my name, but is that my name? I don't know.
Is that me?
It was just an absolutely incredible experience. And what I love about that experience is a moment for reward and recognition for the amazing work that we're doing here at Inclusee, but it's recognition of leadership work for such a long journey. When I got off that moment and took some time to reflect about that, it wasn't just the work that, personally I've been doing in the last 12 months. It's the work that I've been doing in the leadership space for over 22 years. And I think that's, important to reflect on and reflect on what actually brought you to that moment. So it's surreal. I still can't believe it happened.
And when you mentioned dream then, it felt like a dream. And I'm so pleased that you've taken the time to reflect on that, because these things don't just happen. It's not something that we think, oh, that sounds like a nice thing that could happen for me, and then, oh, congratulations, Rachel. So tell us about Inclusee first of all, but then, let's dig into some of that hard work to actually make that dream, that vision for Inclusee a reality. So tell us about Inclusee. What's Inclusee for those who may not know?
Well, I may be a little bit biased, but Inclusee is one of the best organisations you could ever come across. And that is because of the amazing work that we do and the purpose, the whole mission of why we're here. Our mission is very succinct, and it's to use the power of connection to reduce isolation and loneliness for Australians. And we do it very differently in regards to, we do it through digital technology. So we connect older Australians, just like you and I are connecting right now, over a virtual environment, and we connect them with volunteers and team members from all across Australia, and they socially connect, and we're making a big difference in two spaces, which is reducing the loneliness and social isolation component, but we're also helping to support people through the digital divide as well, and getting people a little bit more savvy on the digital front. So it's a purpose that I'm very, very passionate about, something that I want to leave a legacy around is actually bringing social connection to the forefront and ensuring that people need to know that as a society, social connection needs to be the priority. It has so many benefits on so many different fronts, from medical and mental and all sorts of things that don't think people really understand and really understand as a community. It's something that we have lost, and that we really need to bring it back to the priority and make it number one, because that it should be the number one. We're humans. We are social beings. This is how we operate. This is how we're supposed to operate, and so we need to do more connection. So people are not connected enough, and so we've been around as an organisation actually for 51 years now. So which has been a long time, and we actually started in that space 51 years ago. So very different to what we do it today. Of course, it was in a normal face-to-face type environment. We had a building that was built for us to bring older Australians together that were in the local community and connect through activities and things that they actually enjoyed and had interests in. And it was dancing and cards and craft and things like that. And they still do that today, but through a virtual environment instead. So, and my goodness, what happened in between 51 years ago and today, so much has changed in the organisation and the direction that we've gone in. But what I love about it is that we've returned to our core roots of what our actual mission is. And I think that's so important. We are a non-for-profit charity. And so working in this space, you are all about your purpose. You should always be making sure that your strategy, your alignment, everything that you do, everything that you invest in comes back to that key mission and purpose. So it's an amazing organisation. Very proud of what we have achieved and where we are at today. And we've gone through so much change to get it through that digital front. But what that has helped us achieve is to have a further reach for people and connect more people all over Australia. So that's very exciting.
Wow, that is ambitious on so many fronts and so exciting. And there is so much in there. Oh, I've just got to take a breath, Rachel, because I'm not sure where to start, because I'm thinking about older Australians. I'm thinking about technology, the rate of change, the acceleration with technology in change. And for some older Australians, there's fear attached to technology. So what you're saying is, right, social inclusion, we've found that we want to connect people, we want to bring them together, we want to use technology, we're going to break down some of the fear that's attached to that and actually increase people's well-being using technology to value add to the work that we do.
Yes, that's exactly what you do.
My mind is just blowing with that, because it's just like, oh, wow. How does that, how do you start to break down some of those fears, some of those barriers with older Australians. Is that a barrier? Like,
Yeah, it is. It's a huge barrier. And so when in our programs, getting people into the program, they actually have two fears that they're trying to overcome at the same time. One is very much the digital component, and we've got a mix of of participants that are in our programs, from people who have never ever used digital technology in any format ever before, to some people that might be a bit more savvy with it, and some people that are quite savvy with it. So we've got a bit of a mix. So there's the fear of the digital connection, but then there's also the fear of the connection itself. So one of the problems with social connection is when people are either isolated or lonely, getting them back into a community environment and connecting with what starts as strangers is extremely scary. People go, I don't know what to do or how to talk to someone, or what if we don't have anything in common, or what do we talk about? So they've got two fears they've got to overcome when we come into the program. And what we love about Inclusee is our philosophy is to make everything as easy as possible. Everything we do for our virtual community, whether it's staff, whether it's participants, whether it's our volunteer network, to connect in, it needs to be as simplistic as possible. So how we actually do that is whilst we do it through technology, we actually want to make the technology invisible for them, so that they're trying to not concentrate on the technology and they're concentrating more on the social connection component. So we've developed our own app, and it's specifically designed to be as easy as possible. It has bigger, large font writing, really easy buttons to press. So we're taking in consideration some of the challenges that older Australians may have physically with technology as well. And we make it so that it's a couple of buttons. So when we actually connect people, we connect them through pretty much a two-step process. Really, all they need to know to get into our community is how to turn on their device and how to charge it, because obviously if we don't have those two things, it's very hard to connect. And then everything's pretty much touch button, and they connect straight in, to connect just like you and I. So once they get into the program and they realise how easy it is, we actually offer them a whole range of services that help them connect more. So we help them with digital technology services so that they learn more skills, whether it's about their physical device or about certain programs that they want to use as well. So things like if they want to upload photos on Facebook and share with their family and friends, whether they want to learn how to Google and research, it might be their old street that they lived on, or go back down a bit of a memory lane. We can help teach them things, and also all the way to online shopping, so make their life easier and their services are easier as well. We are actually in the aged care sector, and one of the challenges that we have in this sector is the lack of services and funding that are around. So there's so many people out there that need dire services that can't get access to it. And what I love about digital technology, it opens up doors for them and services that they might not be able to get access to. So it's just fantastic on all fronts.
Love it, love it, love it. And volunteers. So that's a conversation I know for many of us. And I've been associated with a number of different volunteer organisations, and I know that it's getting harder and harder for us to find volunteers.
Yeah.
How many volunteers do you have, and how do you attract them?
Yeah, great question. And you're right, volunteers, look, they're a key part of our network. They're key part of our community. When it comes to social connection, you need more than one person. You've got to get the participant that's coming into our community, and then we have the volunteers that connect with us. And we have a range of volunteer roles here at Inclusee. We have the one-on-one connection, so just like you and I, just where one volunteer connects with one participant, and they usually connect once a week and have a chat about whatever it is that they want to talk about and really build a core friendship together. And then we have volunteers that do group programs as well. So we have a whole heap of group programs and different interests. So we have into travel, or into books, or into games. We have into theatre, into singing. My goodness, you should see karaoke when it's on a virtual network. It's absolutely a hoot. But we have volunteers that will help us deliver those types of programs as well. And then we also have volunteers that help us help our participants learn the digital technology component as well. So one of the things that I love about Inclusee is we have a wide range of volunteer roles to offer. We have, we have volunteers changing all the time, but we have between 250 to 300 volunteers at all times that are located all over Australia. And that's what I love about this program. When we were in a local area, we could only have local reach. And now being in a digital front, we can actually expand that out and connect to volunteers all over Australia to ensure that we've got the right volunteers for our program. So we actually spend a lot of time with our participants understanding understanding who they are, what their needs are, what type of people they are, what they love, what they enjoy, and connecting them with the right volunteers as well. So it's really challenging. Volunteer network is continuing to decline, but what I love at Inclusee, and I want to continue to voice that is thinking about how can we do volunteering differently. And what I love about the digital network is there's opportunities for us to connect with corporate volunteers, and they can actually do this program while they're at work. So, some of them only take an hour a week, and they can actually connect in, do it while they're at work, and be part of that volunteering network without it actually implicating their time with their family or their other needs or their other commitments. And that's really what some of the challenges that we have with volunteers is people no longer have the time to do it. So how do we make it easy for them to connect and actually have that impact and fit it into their day-to-day for them?
Yeah, well done. Reducing some of that friction, 100%. And then some organisations, so I know here at Impact, we allocate a couple of hours a month and just go and do whatever you need to give back to whatever is important to you, whether that's giving blood, whether that's doing some sort of volunteer work. Yeah. And I'm sure other organisations do that. But imagine, you don't have to leave your office. You don't have to get in your car and haggle with traffic and do any of that. You can just jump online. And it takes all of that friction out of it. It takes the cost out of it because let's be real, for some people, for some volunteers, if they've got to jump in their car, there's cost associated with them going and doing their volunteering. So this sort of cuts all of that noise out, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes it so easy. As I said, it's that easy to connect to our community. Yeah. And how do we recruit them? So we actually cover some of that cost. We have to have all of our volunteers must be police checked. That's a requirement. We are 100% government funded, so there is safety networks that are in place to ensure that we are protecting our participants in our program, and likewise protecting our volunteers as well. So we do all the police checks for them. We cover all those costs for them. And as you said, doing it on a virtual network, it is essentially free. They don't need to travel anywhere, or there's no additional costs for them to do anything. So that makes it really, really easy. And we gain our volunteers from a wide range of opportunities. We do traditional type marketing, word of mouth. A lot of people join because I love what you just touched on, Tanya, about what you do at Impact is sending people to go volunteer with what they love. Volunteers come and volunteer with things that they're passionate about, things that they have some sort of story or some sort of connection to. And so often we have people that approach us because, their parents have been isolated, or their grandparents have been isolated, or they've heard some sort of story, or they've got some sort of family connection, and they want to ensure that those people are reconnected back into our community network. So we have a wide range of ways that we continue to connect with them. But the fact that we do volunteering differently here at Inclusee, I really encourage everybody to think about how can they offer volunteering opportunities for people that are different, because we've got to keep thinking differently, especially with the decline in the volunteer network. Otherwise, we're going to lose all these beautiful people that do so much for our organisations and for our communities and for Australia.
Yeah, what a great call to action. So not only for those volunteering organisations, but also there's a call to action for employers. So if you don't have some sort of opportunity for your employees to go and give back to the community, please create that. And for all of those amazing employees who would like to find a way to volunteer, but they want to sort of make it as simple as possible, here's your opportunity. We will have a link to Inclusee with this podcast. So please jump on there, check out, see what you can connect to or what your interests are. Is it that simple? They can just jump on.
So jump on the website and contact us. We have a whole volunteering team that are absolutely amazing, and they're here to help and support our volunteers all the way from the moment they commence with Inclusee and all the way until one day that they exit with Inclusee. And we have support materials for them. We have a team to support them through their whole journey. We make the onboarding process as easy as possible, and we do learning and development and reward and recognition for them. We really want to make sure that we show and value our volunteers the entire time that they're with Inclusee as well.
Oh, wow. It's outstanding. I can absolutely understand why those judges awarded Inclusee the Organisation of the Year, but also Rachael, for you, Leader of the Year. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I'm hearing that you've got volunteers all over Australia. I'm therefore making a leap or an assumption that you also have staff all over Australia. So you've got a remote workforce.
I do have a remote workforce, but they're actually coincidentally, we started as an organisation in the local area of Brisbane, and coincidentally all of our team are still located in Queensland. But technically, yes, we are a 100% remote workforce. Our team could work anywhere from Australia. We do have catch-ups every quarter where we do a face-to-face sort of training environment, but technically, yeah, our team could work anywhere.
Wow. So since COVID, we've heard a lot about workforces working remotely, flexible workforces. We've heard also of some of the challenges around that. And for some organisations, they're now saying, hey, we want you to come back to the office and come more into the office. So for you, tell us about some of the, not just the challenges, but some of the opportunities with working with a remote workforce. What have you noticed for Inclusee and the value that's created for your organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm a huge advocate of remote working. I must stress, though, it's not the right fit for every organisation, and it's not the right fit for some roles, and it's not the right fit for some people. But if it's the right fit for the organisation, and let's start there, is we actually made a strategic decision just before COVID actually came in, that we were going to have a 100% remote workforce. And the reason of that being is that was when we were transitioning our services to be 100% digital services. So previous to that, all of our services were delivered face-to-face. And when we made the strategic decision to move in this direction, really align our mission, purpose and values, to realign our services to be digital, the first thing I had to implement was the fact that we needed to walk the talk. So how do we invest and market and grow a digital front if we weren't doing it ourselves? So I went, right, if we're going to do this, we're all doing this. We can't expect our participants and volunteers to do it if we're not leading the way in this space. So that was a strategic decision that we made. And then we were planning to do it actually of June of 2020. COVID hit a little bit earlier, so we obviously fast-tracked that a little bit. And it was making the right decisions and going through those challenges of ensuring that our people were ready and set up for that change, which is a big change. The people that were transitioning through that period, none of them had ever worked remotely before. So it was making sure that we had all the structure in place, making sure that they had all the tools, the systems, the equipment, you name it. In fact, actually, I remember we had a bus at the time. I drove all the team members around with their desk and their computers and their chairs and all the stuff that they needed to actually set up, because many of them didn't even have home offices, to have a home set up properly. And I can't stress enough that if you are working remotely, you need to have the right systems, equipment and tools to actually make that work. So that was one of the transitions into that decision, was making sure that we were an organisation that led the way, that we walked the talk, and that's how we were going to do it. And ever since, I've absolutely advocated for remote work because it fits for our model. It fits for our organisation. And what I suppose some of the amazing things that have actually opportunities that have come out of it is we've learnt so much along the way around what makes a really good remote workforce work. There's things that we've done that we probably didn't get right along that way, but we've absolutely continued to tailor that to make sure that it does. And I think for us, when I'm thinking about the people and making sure that you've got the right people for it, is it's something that is considered and talked about right from the moment that any new staff member actually joins the organisation, that we make sure that they're the right fit for remote work, because as I said, it's not the right fit for everybody. Some people really need that face-to-face interface, and some people might need that hybrid type environment. And we sort of have that hybrid type environment where we bring the team in once a quarter. We do a face-to-face team training day. It's a day that we all spend together, and you do get to see everybody in person, but it's not our main model. So, but learning through that, one of the biggest things I've actually learned from, and the thing that I'm probably most proud that we've actually uncovered through that process, is that we've actually got a very large neurodiverse staff network. So, and I think the remote working is actually one of the benefits of which we've drawn such a beautiful diversity of people to this organisation. And it's because we've got a lot of structure. It's not just the remote work. We offer things like 4-day working weeks if they want to do that. They've got full flexibility provisions. So people who've got kids that they want to leave at 3 o'clock and go pick up, them and bring them home from school, they can do. If they need to leave for an appointment, they can do. We've got all of those sorts of structures and provisions in them for them that make that work. And the remote workforce was a big driver of that neurodiverse network. And I think it's because people prefer to work at home if they identify as neurodiverse, have their own space, have the setups and equipment and structures and accommodations that they personally need so that they can work their best. And throughout this process, we've understood and grown through a safe space is that we probably have up to maybe as high as 65-70% of neurodiverse team members, which is incredible. Like, I'm absolutely blown away and so supportive of that. And I think more organisations need to think about when they're having that conversation of we need to bring our team members back from being remote workers. I'm like, is that the right structure for them? You know, what is it that that person needs? So I think people are not thinking about that space a lot, and especially when it comes to neurodiversity, it's a space that in the diversity front, I don't think many organisations are spending a lot of time on. And we need to know more about, because there's so much under that. You know, through my journey of learning about it, you know, there's more than 180 different types of diversity under that one umbrella, and they all have different needs. And what I love is that because we have a remote workforce and we can support our team members with that, we can support each one of those individuals to work the best way that they need to work.
So again, a lot in that, and thank you for unpacking some of that, because I think it's given us insight into this hasn't been easy, the dream and what it takes to actually bring the dream to reality. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes the, getting in the car, taking the desks, the chairs, to employees to set them up, to make sure that they've got the right environment, the learning that goes along. And I think sometimes it's the incidental learning. As you said, didn't expect it. It wasn't until we started going down this track that we learnt more about our people and the individual needs of our people, which is incredibly important, isn't it, to get them not only living through a strengths-based model, and how they're showing up, but also as an employer, being able to support your employees in the best way possible. So thank you for sharing that, because
you're
that
welcome.
Provided some beautiful insight into some of the grit, but also the learning that happened along the way for you as a leader. One of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times, and I don't know whether you even realise it, is you talk a lot about vision, mission, values, purpose. Vision, mission, values, purpose. What for you as a leader do you think is the most important? So if you're thinking about those things, is there anything that you would prioritise over the other? And if you think back to 2019, Rachael entering the business, CEO cap on, and going, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to focus on the most right at this point in time, even though I know all of those things are important.
Mm-hmm. And the thing I focused on first, and I love that you actually structured like that, because I'm taking myself straight back to that moment when I walked into the doors the first time in the organisation, and first day on the job. The thing I started with was values. I'm very much a values-based leader, very passionate about that space. And I took the team on a journey to actually really understand what our values as an organisation were, because back in 2019, it wasn't clear what those values were as an organisation. So I did a lot of team development workshops and getting to understand each of the team members and really talking about what values were, and that it's not that, it's just something that you stick on the wall that people look at, that's a sign that looks nice, that I needed them to understand that when we talk about values, it needs to be embedded in everything that we do. It needs to be how we live and breathe. It needs to be how we make decisions. It needs to be how we conduct ourselves every day. And so I took the team through, and we actually workshopped and redefined and redeveloped what the organisation's values were. And we actually got down to 3 core ones, and we wanted to keep that very simplistic at that point because the organisation was going through a massive amount of change, and they were trust, respect and compassion. And then we unpacked what it actually meant for those values. What does it look like? What does trust look like to someone? Because what trust looks like to you might look differently to what trust looks like for me. But then I actually took the team through different workshops to actually understand what are their own personal values, because I don't think people reflect on that enough. And when you understand what each other's values are, you can understand a little bit about more how they operate and what's important to them, how you might need to communicate to them, how you might need to bring them into something when you're working on a project, what's going to be important to them. So we worked on the organisation's values, and then we worked on the team's individual values to really understand each other as well. So that was the first place I started. And I continue to reflect back to values in everything that I do. I probably don't realise I actually mention it so much, so because it is just part of who I am and how I operate day to day. Even when we come to performance reviews at Inclusee, the first set of questioning from both peer interviews and feedback that come through, as well as my own feedback, as well as their self-reflections, is how did you demonstrate the values of Inclusee? Please give us examples. And so we talk about it all the time. It's not the pretty picture on the wall for us. We live and breathe it.
Yeah, absolutely. And completely agree that values have to be inherent. The vision, I think, that's the thing that you do come up with, and obviously that's the bit that you want to all be marching in the same direction, but those values and here at Impact, I guess for us it's about how do we talk about them at staff meetings, and how do we share our stories with each of us, because I think sometimes we can forget or take for granted the great stuff that people do in demonstrating an organisation's values. And unless we're even calling out the small stuff and those little small wins that they have along the way, it's so easy for that to get lost. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the other things we do here at Inclusee is we actually have values awards. So when we do get together once a quarter, I get the team to nominate the staff member and actually give me an example of, okay, this person's been nominated for the value of trust. What did they do? So share those beautiful stories. Oh my goodness, when they come through, I absolutely love reading them all. Very hard because obviously I have to make the decision of who's getting the award. Very difficult decision, but I love that because it just shows that day to day that they're living and breathing in everything that they do. And even myself, I often take the time to reflect at the end of the week, and I think about particularly really difficult decisions I need to make, really challenging ones, that did I demonstrate the values through those? And, some people might go, even when you have to make a difficult decision and the answer is no to something, or you're pulling away from something, or whatever it might be, people might go, well, how did you demonstrate respect for that? Because that, you said no to that person. I'm like, but I did it in a respectful manner. I did it. This is how I act. Sometimes I can't always say yes. Sometimes I have to make those difficult decisions and take things in different directions. But did I demonstrate it through that decision? And I always reflect on that.
And I think leadership on the other side of the fence with that. So the leaders making the decisions, but also the leaders within our teams also respecting that you don't always get what you want. Like that's the reality of leadership. So what am I going to learn from being told no in that situation? What am I learning from that? Is there anything I would have done differently if there was some ask or a pitch that I needed to put forward? And I guess there's learnings from both sides, isn't there? So you've just talked about your reflection, but also for our teams being able to reflect on that decision as well, to go, okay, don't always get the way, it always doesn't come my way. That's the reality of life, isn't it? It's not always going to come my way.
Very, very true. And now Inclusee's grown. We now have 6 values. So we've added on another 3 sub-values. So we've got our 3 core, and then we've added on inclusivity, connection, and impact. So wanting to make sure that we're bringing those to the forefront as well. Obviously, we're very much here about the impact we make. The services that we provide are literally life-changing. We have participants that tell us all the time about if they weren't in our program, they wouldn't be here. And when they refer to here, they mean physically here at all. So it's just amazing, the impact that social connection does make. And then obviously connection, that's a bit of an obvious one for us, but inclusivity, and at Inclusee, we're an extremely inclusive organisation. We're extremely diverse. I absolutely love it. And we have so many different people from different walks, backgrounds, and that's what makes a community absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and that's incredible impact for someone to say, I actually wouldn't be here without your organisation. Let me pause for a moment and take that in, because that's pretty powerful. Yeah, so congratulations.
Thank you. I've never worked in a role, when I came into this organisation, I'd always worked in the private sector. And this is why I'm here. I woke up one day, and one thing I say to my team all the time is my job as a CEO is to get your 2 feet to the side of the bed and love what you do, love coming to work and make the most out of it, and you love everything about what you do. If you get to one day that you put your 2 feet on the side of the bed and you don't feel that, I hate to say it, don't come because I want you to have that excitement. I want you to love what you do. And it's okay if sometimes you lose that passion. And it's been a motto I've always had for my entire career. And one day it was me that put the 2 feet on the side of the bed one day. And I went, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? What's my reason? What's my driver? What am I trying to achieve out of this? And that was the decision that morning that I went, I need to do something different, and I want to go into something that's purpose-driven. And that's what changed me to come into this industry. And now I absolutely love it. Like, where else would you get that type of feedback, that impact, that this is literally life-changing? I've never experienced that before, and now I'm absolutely hooked. So every time we hear this amazing feedback, it just drives me harder and harder and harder to ensure that we do more and deliver more programs to more people. We've recently just hit over 100,000 hours of connection, and my goal is 1 million. Somebody thought I said 1 billion one day, and I said let's get to the 1 million first, and then we'll focus on the billion. But it just keeps you going. It motivates you. It inspires you. It just it makes you want to be a better person. And I love everything about what we do.
Yeah, beautiful. So tell me about coming into this role. How is your leadership style? Has it changed? So you're saying I've changed as a person, but has your leadership style changed as a result of working in this sector? No, it hasn't changed. I've always followed the leadership style of a servant leadership style. That's just how I've been. I've always been that person. That's what got me into leadership. I really understood the difference very early on, the difference between, and some people don't, the difference between a manager and a leader. They're not the same thing. Just because you are a manager doesn't make you a leader, but also at the same time, you don't have to have the manager title to be a leader. And so for me, my philosophy as a leader was always it's not about me. I'm not here for the title. I'm not here for the accolades. I'm not here because I want to be on the top of the organisation chart. Here at Inclusee, I'm not. We have a flat hierarchy here in this organisation, so I don't want to be. In fact, actually, I'm here for the team. I'm here for the people that we're here for, to ensure that we can actually achieve these things. My job is to support them, give them everything that they need, make sure that they're doing the best that they can and growing them, and I just get out of their way. And if anything they need, that's what I'm here for. So, it's funny that throughout my entire career, regardless of how I felt about different roles or changes that I've gone through, I've always remained true to that type of leadership style. Great. And what about your people? So growing the people around you, because I think there are times that we see little ones pop their heads up and you go, how did I not notice you before? There'll be some behaviour and you'll go, that's a beautiful leadership behaviour that you're building that depth of leadership throughout your organisation. How do you support the growth of leadership at Inclusee?
Yeah, and that's a great question. What a beautiful moment when you see those moments happening where they pop up and you go, oh, wow. You just are so proud. And, I think in leadership, leaders should be making more leaders, that is your job. You should be doing that. So, here at Inclusee, look at one of the challenges that we have as an organisation, as a smaller sort of non-for-profit is creating some of those opportunities, for growth. But I always support our team to grow them regardless of what that might look like, and having some real honest conversations about what it is that they're wanting to do, where they're wanting to go, whether that might be within the walls of Inclusee, or whether it might be actually furthering them on and moving on outside of Inclusee because we might not have the physical opportunity here. And I think more people need to change that in their leadership discussions and make people comfortable to have those really, really in-depth, true conversations, because I still think there's a lot of people out there that feel that they can't tell their employer, oh, this is what I want to be in a couple of years and what I want to work to, especially if it doesn't mean it's in the organisation. And I'm all about, no, I want to have those conversations. I want to grow you. What do we need to get you to? What skills and gaps do we need to cover? And how do we get that learning environment happening for you to get there? So at Inclusee, we have a very large learning and development culture here. We make sure we invest time into our team members so that they're doing learning and development every week. It's part of their structure. We actually physically invest in them to do that as well. And we have those conversations as part of their development plans about where it is that they want to go to. And even with people that are happy in their roles and don't want to do anything more, how do we actually continue to grow their learning and development in that space as well? Because some people go, okay, I don't want to be promoted, or I don't want to do any of this. So what does that mean for me? There is an opportunity for everyone to continue to learn. And that's something that I'm very passionate about is, if you're not learning, you're dying. There's a bit of that saying in there. And I think you need to always be learning something new. I make it something as part of my practice every week, that I ensure that I've done something that continues my development every week. And I'm always learning.
And that was going to be my next question, actually. So tell me about how you do. So for some of our leaders listening or some of our listeners listening, and they're going, I just find it really hard, life gets in the way. And when people think learning, I think they're too quick to jump to a course or a degree or some other type of accreditation that they might like to undertake.
Yep.
But what are just some basic things that you can have so you are actually living? So for me, one of my values is learning, absolutely, but it doesn't come with another degree and it doesn't come with some other accredited course. What does that look like for you? How can people do that?
Yeah, I think learning is a bit like exercise. People need to find what works for them. And you're right, it doesn't need to be a course. It doesn't need to be a degree. For me, and how I actually do it is I make it my priority. So before I even start my week, I do a lot of planning around what my weeks look like, but I actually embed the learning and development opportunities or time into my calendar and schedule first. So, and I treat it I treat it as a priority. I treat it as something that you can't book over. A lot of people try to do that type of structure. And then when life gets in the way and things get busy, what's the first thing that drops out of their calendar? Or what's the first thing that they'll remove to put another meeting or something in? And I'm like, you need to take that time to invest in yourself. You're a priority. Especially as a leader, you have to continue to learn because you need to grow that knowledge and be the best support for your team. So if you're not learning and constantly improving on yourself, how can you be the best leader for them? So I think about it from two points, is that I need that own growth on myself, but I need to do it because there's a personal responsibility for my team as well. So I embed it in my calendar, I embed it in my schedule first and foremost, and make sure that that's part of my week, part of my life, part of my day to day. And I look at a range of different ways that I can actually do that. It might be an experience that's actually happened during the week that I take a learning from. It might be just going back and spending half an hour on that discussion or that meeting and reflecting on that and go, okay, what went really well with that? What could I have improved on? That is learning. It doesn't need to be a course. Sometimes it is a course, and sometimes I do courses as well. I do everything from actual physical study to I might do a LinkedIn learning course. Some of them can be like a 15-minute course or a 30-minute course. I love nothing more than doing two things at once, which is usually doing a walk and a bit of exercise, listening to a podcast or listening to something, an audio book or something that I can actually learn from. It could be just reading. One of the things I've always had challenges with is sometimes finding the time to read books, but I break it down into smaller parts and go, I'll just read one chapter a night. and then commit to that. And then I can actually get through those things. Sometimes it might be I'll find articles or different things that I can read about that's happening in the industry to learn more about what's going on in the market and understand those sorts of things. So it could be newsletters. It can be anything. I think people just need to open up and have a wide range of different options to build in their learning. It shouldn't always be one thing. It should be a whole heap of different things.
Oh, and I do love how you've said, they can be small things. So you talked about habit stacking, so combining those things with something that we love doing already, an activity that we love doing. It might be with a partner or something ourselves in relation to exercise. So any of those small incremental things, building it into the day. And I think another thing, sometimes we give up too easily. So we sort of set up on our day. It doesn't quite go the way we planned. And then we go, I'll leave it until tomorrow. I think if we can section up our day and go, okay, I didn't finish it in the first quarter of the day, but I can do it in my second quarter or my third quarter, not to just give up on the day, because the day then turns into a week, then turns into a month. And before we know it, we're thinking about New Year's resolutions again. And we think, we'll just start it again then. So I think don't give up. It's something that we can continually and putting it into the diary. So for me, exercise is absolutely non-negotiable. It goes in first up in the day, so that there is nothing else that can prevent it. And I know with my Pilates class in the afternoon, they make me pay for it if I don't go. So,
wow! There you go. There's motivation.
There's another non-negotiable. So absolutely, it will hit my financial bottom line if I don't turn up. So
and sometimes we need that, right? I think sometimes when there's no consequence, and if you're not putting time into learning and development, there is absolutely a consequence there. People may not see it because they go, I've just missed it. I didn't do it. I can't see any physical, tangible thing that I've lost there. But you've lost knowledge. You've lost something new. There's something that you could have improved on over time, or even in the first 15 minutes. That is an opportunity lost. And if you don't get back on that horse really quickly, as you said, and really get back into it as soon as possible, you think about how much you've lost over that time. It's incredible to think about.
Absolutely. We're continuing to build. And something else that you have talked about a few times is reflection. So I think it is a critical skill for a leader, is to have that consistency around being able to reflect on their practice, being able to look for ways that they may have done things better, or is this serving me? Is this not serving me? Because sometimes we can get into leadership habits that we don't actually realize that they're no longer serving us. So can you tell us a little bit more about your reflective practice particularly in relation to leadership?
Yeah, I do it in a few different ways. So I have a bit of a structure. I have sort of like a daily reflection where I'll spend a bit of sort of the last 5-10 minutes of the day where I'll sort of do a bit of a stop, a pause, and think about the day, how it went. Did I achieve what I wanted to achieve? Am I happy with how things are going? Is there something or a moment in time that I wanted to actually think more on or improve on? And that's sometimes where I can actually pull my learning and development from, is when I've had those reflective things going, okay, I could have done that a little bit better, or maybe I need to work on this. I go, right, I jot that down, and then I actually put a plan in place to go, right, that's going to be my focus of, okay, I might do something around a LinkedIn learning course around that, or I might do something and I can build from that. I have bigger reflection practices as well. So for example, end of financial year is a big moment in time for us as an organisation, and I've just spent, pretty much most of last week really looking back on the organisation and how it's been tracking over the last 6 months, how we achieved, are we going well to where we set our goals, what does that look like, where we might be stuck and what might be causing that. But I spend a lot of time in certain moments in time actually reflecting on that, and have just gone through that. And for here at Inclusee, I loved it because for us at this point in 6 months for us, we are well a track of where we wanted to be. I'm so proud of what the team are achieving. And I get so much out of that reflection process. Either I've taken a learning out of it, I've taken something I can work on, but sometimes it's actually just having a proud moment and thinking about what you've achieved and what the organisation's achieved and what the community's achieved, it's just an incredible thing to do. And I really encourage more people to do it. So I do it in a few different manners. I do it quick, small and sharp, where I need to. I often also do it after big moments. So for example, if I've got a big presentation that I need to do, or something I need to do with the board, I'll take some time and make sure I carve that out after those events and really make sure I'm undistracted, sit down and think about what really went well, what could I work on, and how did that go from there? What would I do differently? You know, that's a big question constantly all the time that I go, if I could go back in time, what would I do differently? And sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes I get a lot of asking myself that question. And then I also do the big reflective processes as well. So I think reflection can look differently for everybody, but for me, I make sure I structure that into everything that I do and take the time to do it. Again, it's a habit. You need to make that a habit. You need to make it part of your schedule, part of your process.
Rachael, it really sounds you've been quite courageous in when you've come into the organisation. As you said, you've had to really look at the model that you came in with, and you've really had to think of it very, very differently. You are being courageous in the way that you're looking at the volunteer movement, because that's who you rely on to run your business.
Yep.
There are going to be people listening to this who are coming very much from a fear-driven state. So I would love to do that. However, the yes buts and the, you know, lying awake at night going, I would love to do what she's doing, but what would be your words of encouragement to anyone who might have fear preventing them from taking that next step?
I think when it comes to fear, you know, and I actually love what you've got behind you there, Tanya, on your wall, that we're actually our own barriers. You know, I think people create this fear or create a barrier, as you would say, around ourselves. It's often what we do to ourselves, you know. It's not other people saying that to us. And I think about back in my career history, in my leadership journey, most of it was terrifying, to be honest. But I always try and push myself and think to myself, but what if I didn't do it? What would I have a regret? And what am I going to lose if I don't give it a go? You know, what have I got to lose? And I think you need to actually bring it back. And often it's nothing. Really, you haven't lost anything and you've gained a lot. And even if you don't get to wherever that direction or that goal or that place or whatever it is, that role that you're trying to get to, you giving it a go, you have learnt something from that. So you are gaining no matter what the outcome is. You're gaining knowledge, you're gaining learning, you're gaining development, so that when you give it a go the next time, you actually do it even better. So I think when it comes to fear, people need to really take some time and jot down what that looks like. I think really put it out of your head and put it down on a piece of paper or a notepad, or jot it down in something. Even talk about it in a recording and talk about why you're feeling that way. You know, what is the challenge around that? What are the barriers? What support do you need? What things do you need to put in place? And what things do you need to put in your own structure and development to actually get you there, to break that fear down? And a lot of it's confidence. A lot of it comes down to that confidence space. You know, I always have that fear of coming into a new role, whether it's a new industry or into a new role or a new team or a new structure, that I have to take that moment to step back and go, I can do this. You know, I always go, what? But I don't know everything. Or what if I don't know this and I don't know this? You get to know those things. And I think being authentic is really important through that process. You know, when I start into a new role or a new organisation, when I started Inclusee, I came into the role saying to everybody, I don't know everything about this organisation. I'm brand new into this industry. I want to learn from you. Teach me, show me. I'm here. I'm a big sponge. I want to take it all in. And I think being authentic and demonstrating that to your team, because people assume people in leadership roles should know everything, and they don't. And they shouldn't, actually. You know, good leaders employ team members that are experts in that space. I shouldn't be an expert. My role as a leader is always to find the best people and the people that can do the right things. And I know how to do that. Doesn't matter what industry or what role I'm in. So I have to take my step back and reflect on that, reflect about what I have been through, what skills and what strengths can I actually bring to this, but also be aware that I don't know all the answers, but I will learn them in time, and that helps break down some of that fear aspect.
Consistency, breaking things down. As you're listening to this, you can't see what is on the back wall in my office, and that is around the only barriers we have in front of us are the ones that we place on ourselves. And for some people, they'll look at that and go, you can tell that's written by a privileged white woman or something like that. However, the reason that I do have it is for me, but also for my team, because it is sometimes challenging our thinking. Exactly what Rachael said. Challenging our thinking. Is this me with the barrier in front of it, or is it something else that I'm identifying that is preventing this from happening? And more often than not, it's our thinking, it's us overthinking it, it's something that we've sort of dragged through from childhood that we still carry as a belief, and that it's preventing us from taking that next step forward. So having a go, learning as you go, being very clear, I guess, about what you are learning along the way, so the next time you try it, it's not going to be as bad, because you've actually had a go and you've gotten it out of your head. So thank you. There's been a lot of really beautiful, consistent themes throughout, Rachael. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Can we touch on creativity? Because I feel like you're quite a creative soul as a leader. You sort of think of things very differently. How do you inspire creativity within your team, that inspiration around innovation? How do you keep that happening within your team so that it's not just all on Rachael to come up with the ideas?
Yeah, and I love that you actually say that, Tanya, because I don't perceive myself to be a creative person at all. But I do like to think differently. And, I think I reflect back on finding the right people. I find innovation and creativity through my team, through my people, and often find those answers of what I might be looking for through them. So things that they might be doing or suggestions, feedback and having an open door as a leader and getting people to really be comfortable in bringing their suggestions and ideas to you is one of the biggest blessings that you could ever have as a leader. And it's through them that I listen and take time to listen to what it is that they're talking about, because they're the experts. They know how something might work, or they are the ones that are at the front of what we are doing as a service. They know all the issues. They know what's not working. They know how we could do something differently. So for me, it's not all my ideas. It's my team's collective ideas and how we can bring that together. And sometimes you find those one little special moments where you just have that aha moment. You go, that, we need to do something with that. And that is what happened here at Inclusee. We started doing face-to-face social connection programs, and we started doing that about 8 years ago. It actually started before I came into the organisation on a very basic front. And someone said, why can't we do this digitally? And what would be the benefits of those? And it's sort of just taking a basic idea and then learning how to run with that. So what I suppose my strength is, as I said, bringing those people together that have those amazing ideas. We've taken our program and then thinking, okay, how do we make this on a bigger scale? How do we connect more people? How do we have a bigger impact? How does that work? And I always love things that are different. I've actually done that, and I never really actually reflected on that too much before, thinking about reflection. But even in my own businesses that I've personally owned, when I went into those businesses, they were businesses that I did for an investment purpose, but I looked for something that was done, but done differently. Something that, you can't reinvent the wheel, but it was new in the market. It was new in the industry. And I love opportunities like that, because it's about learning from those opportunities and finding ways that we can benefit. And one of the ways of doing digital programs is there's so many benefits for people to do that. They can connect in their own home. If they've got a disability, that can help them connect in any way that they can without having challenges around that. We can connect people all over Australia. There's so many benefits from thinking differently. I think any time as leaders, we need to always challenge ourselves that don't always do things that the way that they've always been done. That's one thing. That's one saying I hate. When you come into somewhere, I go, why do you do it this way? And they go, well, that's how it's always been done. Okay, we need to change that. Here at Inclusee, nothing is in concrete. I want to change. If it needs to be changed, it needs to be changed. If it needs to work better. And so when I think about innovation, I talk to my team. And in fact, every year we have a focus. This year is the innovation at Inclusee. And I think about innovation, and I talk about innovation a lot around, it's not just around technology. People think innovation's technology. It can be. But innovation is anything. It can be big or small that has a great change or a great impact to come from that. And people are coming up with those ideas all the time. So I really actually reflect on my team and take those amazing ideas from them and then work out how I can remove those barriers and bring that to life for them. That's my role.
So Leadership HQ, Outstanding Leader of the Year, CEO of Inclusee. You've heard it here, folks. I don't know everything. I lean into my team. I talk to my team a lot to look for their ideas, canvass their ideas. We like to look at things differently. I'm continually reflecting on my own practice. I'm always looking for ways to learn. It all just seems so basic and simple, but it's not that, is it?
No.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
And that takes its toll after a while for you as a leader, as a CEO. How do you continue to look after your well-being?
Well, it's a great question because leadership is really hard. I don't take this role lightly. I don't take leadership lightly. It's a lot of investment in my people, and I have been through situations in my leadership journey in which I've come close to burnout a couple of times. I have absolutely learnt from those situations about identifying when I am getting close to certain things. Resting and relaxation is probably not something I'm very good at. So anyone that knows me probably knows I don't stop too often. But I've learnt from those situations, and you've got to actually have that self-care in place, because it's like anything. If you are not in the best position yourself, how do you care for others? And I've got a caring responsibility to my team, to my community, to our stakeholders, to our board, to everybody that we deal with. So if I'm not in the best possible place, how can I help them? So for me, learning from things that I've done previously and what hasn't worked is making sure that I put structure in place. So, making sure, I love that you talked about exercise, Tanya. I'm big on making sure health and fitness is in place. In fact, actually, we're doing a 12-week challenge here in Inclusee at the moment that we're trying to get everybody's steps up more. Look, one of the challenges of working as a remote workforce is you could easily get stuck at the desk because you haven't got those, walks down the hallway to go find a staff member. So I'm trying to increase everybody's steps, and I've got a program in place at the moment called Catch the CEO. So they've actually got to beat how many steps I do a week.
Awesome. Love that. Love a good competition. Love it.
Love a bit of competition. So health and well-being, actually learning to switch off. And it's taken me a long time in my career to set those boundaries. Years ago, I used to think the motto was the harder you worked, the longer hours you worked, the better you must be. And I absolutely think that's rubbish now. So I've completely come away from that direction, and I set clear boundaries. I work within my hours. I don't work more than 40 hours a week. That's probably the most I work in a week, because those boundaries are important. I don't want my work life to have impact on my personal life, in my family life. And it has before. My eldest daughter probably has plenty of stories where, she was the last kid on the step at kindy getting picked up because I've been stuck at work. And I'm like, that's not what I want to be remembered for. People are not going to remember how many hours I was at work, but my daughter is going to remember that she was the last one to be picked up. So I set those boundaries, make sure that I don't work over those boundaries. I make sure that my productivity and my structure is really in place to ensure that happens really effectively. Exercise, sleep is the most important thing for me. I talk about it. It's the most boring conversation. Sleep should hopefully put people to sleep. But for me, it's really important. Like if I don't get a good 8 hours sleep a night, it does impact me hugely in my productivity. I'm just not the same person. So making sure I have a routine with that, making sure that I'm eating well. It takes so many different things that you've got to put in place to ensure you're at your optimum productivity and process. So all of those things, health, exercise, sleep, well-being, taking time, setting boundaries, reflecting, taking time off, actually planning out. For me, it was a big thing this year. I hadn't actually had a family holiday for a while. So one of my goals I actually set this year was, we're going to book a family holiday. We're going to go away on a family holiday. And this is something that I actually have to work towards. And I put it in place. I set that goal and we hit it. We went to Singapore for a week this week and actually got to celebrate after the awards. We went on the Monday after the awards night. So that was a great way to go spend some time with the family and go celebrate and take some time out, because you really need that.
Absolutely. And it's self-leadership, right? That's just leadership in action. But really, as you said, that's self-care. It's our own self-leadership, the practices that we have in place. So thank you for sharing so many important things. And I think you really, that spectrum around the physical, the emotional, the psychological, like we've got to think of all of those things when we're taking that time out for ourselves. So thank you for sharing. Is there anything for you, Rachael, before we've been talking for an hour. I find that hard to believe. Every now and then I look down and it's like, oh my goodness, we've been talking for an hour. Yeah. Is there anything for you that you felt like we could have or should have talked about and we haven't, or anything that you'd hoped that we'd talk about and we haven't?
No, I think it's been fantastic, Tanya. I think we've had a great conversation about a range of different things. And what I loved is that you opened with about how passionate you are about talking about leadership. And I feel exactly the same. I'm so privileged to be a leader. For me, it's an absolute honor to be a leader. And I love talking about it. I love talking with other leaders about the fantastic things that they're doing. But for me, it's about imparting, what my experiences have been. What have I learned from, and what do I do to help other leaders learn and grow from them as well? And listening to a podcast like this is a great way of learning the development of how you can actually improve your own space as well. So I love that you started with how much you love talking about leadership, because I could talk for hours about it.
I kind of feel the same way, to be honest. I feel like we're on the same wavelength there. Absolutely. So thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute privilege to talk to you. I love talking to other leaders who are very much on that shared space around we're continuing to learn, we're continuing to grow. It is a practice. And thank you for sharing so much about Inclusee. It has been wonderful to learn more about your incredible organisation and the amazing work that you're doing to connect, because from a wellbeing perspective, what we know is that at any given point in time, over 80% of our population is languishing. They're really struggling, and Inclusee are making a huge difference, in improving that social connection for people. So congratulations on the great work that you are doing. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your really busy day to have a chat.
My pleasure. Look, as I said, this is important to me, taking this time and learning from yourself and helping that hopefully our conversation inspires somebody to do something differently, to overcome those fears that we've talked about, to maybe challenge themselves and do something that improves their leadership. Well, it was an hour absolutely worth investing. So my absolute pleasure, Tanya. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, you're beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks for the work that you do. Congratulations again on your award. Very well deserved. I'm sure everyone listening is going, absolutely understand while she was awarded the Outstanding Leader of the Year. So thank you, Rachael. For any of our listeners, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate your time. Please jump on, have a look at Inclusee's website. You will have a link with this podcast that you'll be able to go and have a look. And don't forget to ask your employer for some time out that you can actually be a volunteer at Inclusee if you would like to. So jump on there and find out more. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Rachael, but we do look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
We understand that some topics discussed in this podcast series may be sensitive and triggering for some listeners. If today's discussion has affected you, please seek support. Lifeline is available 24/7 at 13 11 14, or you can use the chat option on their website. For those in the Wide Bay Burnett region, Impact Community Services is here to help. Visit impact.org.au if you wish to self-refer. Simply click the Make a Referral button at the top of the page. We hope you found today's episode valuable. If so, please subscribe to stay updated. Remember, We are stronger together.